If you think some people have a lot of lip, well, they're no match for the great gapes of the natural world. We're counting down the top 10 most extreme mouths in the animal kingdom and comparing our little cake holes to their gigantic jaws. It's a hard act to swallow when big mouths are taken to the most extreme. Earth is a planet of extremes. Extreme places and extreme animals. But some animals are more extreme than others. Join us as we count down to find the most unusual, the most extraordinary, the most extreme. Our search for the world's most extreme mouth begins with an animal that really does have jumbo-sized jaws. Meet Gita the Asian elephant.
Steady.
She lives at the Los Angeles Zoo and weighs about 3 tons. She's number 10 in the countdown because an elephant has a very big mouth and the largest molars on the planet. Carrying out a dental checkup is easy when the mouth is more than half a meter wide and when there are only 4 teeth to look at. Each tooth weighs more than 2 kilograms and is the size of a brick. Gita will grind her way through 6 sets of these massive molars in her lifetime. That's because the plants she eats are often full of silica, one of the minerals that makes up sand. Chewing on plants every day can grind down the enamel of the teeth. So when Gita turned 40, she was on to her last set of molars. In the wild, old elephants that wear out all their teeth may starve to death. But for now, Gita's teeth are in good shape, so it's high fives all around. Gita needs her big teeth and big mouth because she really has a mammoth appetite. Every day, an adult elephant needs to eat about 5% of its body weight in food. That's a lot of bales of hay, more than 50 tons every year. Imagine if we had an elephant's appetite. For the average man, eating 5% of his body weight would mean chewing through more than 4 kilograms of bread every single day. That would add up to more than 3,000 loaves of bread a year. And we'd be cramming all that food into a mouth that's only about 5 centimeters wide. If you compare the size of our mouth to the size of our body, the ratio of 2% means that we have a relatively tiny mouth compared to body length. Now compare our little jaws with the huge mouth of the elephant. But then, everything on an elephant's body is enormous. So relatively speaking, its mouth-to-body length ratio is only half that of a human. And that's why the elephant is only number 10 in the countdown. It does have gigantic jaws, yet in proportion to the rest of its body, the elephant has little to mouth off about. While other animals in the countdown have jaws that are proportionately much bigger, few can match the elephant's desire for food. An elephant can spend up to 18 hours a day feeding. But not even this insatiable appetite can compare to the lengths our next contender will go to as it tries to fill its big mouth. This is Umar Alvi from London. He may look like any other teenager, but inside his mouth is a big surprise. Umar is the proud owner of one of the longest tongues in the world. Stretching an amazing 65 millimeters from lip to tip, it measures more than twice the length of the average human tongue. Having such an awesome appendage inside your mouth has all kinds of uses, from eating ice cream to wiping your nose. But no human can match the licking power of the animal at number 9 in the countdown. One of the strangest looking animals in the world is the giant anteater. It has a small opening little more than a few millimeters wide at the end of its long, tubular snout. This may not sound much of a mouth, but the giant anteater is number 9 in the countdown because what it lacks in width, it makes up for in extraordinary length. Its mouth may only be the width of a pencil, but it can stretch back more than half a meter along that enormous snout. On the grassy plains of Brazil, the anteater's big mouth is designed for one thing: to seek and destroy ants and termites. There's no room and no need for teeth in the mouth of the anteater. All it has to do is roll out a tongue that can extend more than half a meter down a termite tunnel. It's covered in sticky mucus and can be flicked in and out 150 times a minute. But this isn't the only creature in South America that has a useful tongue. One man is harnessing the supercharged tongue of the cow, not to catch termites, but to offer hope to the hairless. At the Institute for Capillary Health and Beauty, Ancisa Duque says that because men simply towel dry their hair, the follicles fill with water and the hair then rots and falls off. But he claims he knows the cure. Meet Simona the cow. Duque says that her tongue, combined with his secret tonic, can make hair grow again. Of course, Simona won't lick just anyone's head, only those that have been first smeared with molasses and oats. Duque claims these human cowlicks experience such spectacular regrowth that he has no need to advertise. Word of mouth alone has hundreds of men lining up to be licked by this bovine big mouth. The only things taking a licking from a giant anteater are termites. Because it has no teeth, it uses powerful stomach muscles to grind up the insects. But then all kinds of big mouths are able to swallow their food in a single gulp. So far, we've seen anteaters with super snouts and elephants with massive molars. But still to come is a big mouth that really gets into the swim of things. And what special technique would you need to swallow something bigger than your head? Find out next on The Most Extreme. The next contender in our countdown of most extreme big mouths is the snake. While snakes like this python choke the life out of their lunch, others can kill with a single venomous bite. But all snakes have the same problem. They have no teeth suitable for cutting or chewing food, so they have to swallow their prey whole. even if it's something bigger than their head. And this is why snakes are number 8 in the countdown. The width of their jaws may only be a fraction of the length of their long body, but they can enlarge the size of their mouth using a trick that's beyond even the best human contortionist. Contrary to popular opinion, snakes and contortionists do not have to dislocate their joints to achieve these bizarre positions. Instead, they rely on extreme flexibility. Although snakes have an extra anatomical modification that gives them truly jaw-dropping powers. Not even the most flexible contortionist would be able to swallow something the size of their head, simply because of the way our jaw is connected to our skull. Most humans can only open their jaw to about 45 degrees. If we wanted to eat like a snake, first, we'd need to add an extra bone to our jaw to act as a double-jointed hinge. This extra bone would mean that we would be able to drop our jaw much lower. And that would give us the ability to open our mouth to a massive 150 degrees, just like the snake. But snakes have another trick. They can split apart their lower jaw, which allows the mouth to stretch much wider. With jaws like a snake, then we too could easily swallow food that's as big as our head. And entering the record books wouldn't have been such a stretch for 13-year-old Sarah Davis of Missouri. She's about to find a use for her big mouth that even a snake would find challenging. Sarah can do unusual things with drinking straws.
250.
Lots of drinking straws. Strangely enough, snakes use a similar trick when swallowing a huge mouthful of food. A human would quickly suffocate if we tried eating like a snake, because we can't have a mouth and throat full of food and breathe at the same time. Snakes solve the problem by having a reinforced windpipe that can be pushed forward to the front of the lower jaw. It's like a built-in feeding snorkel. But the python's not the only breathtaking big mouth in the countdown. Our last two contenders have really put their money where their mouth is. But still to come, we go lunching with a bird that always leaves you with the bill. And later, we'll get cheeky with an extraordinary human big mouth. That's coming up on The Most Extreme. Our next contender has a beak that really can hold more than its belly can. Soaring in to number 7 in the countdown is the pelican. It has one of the biggest mouths of any bird in the world, and it uses it to go fishing. Diving from more than twice the height of the surface, and then it opens that massive mouth to scoop up a meal. Thanks to an expandable pouch that can hold 3 times more fluid than its stomach. A single mouthful Pelican's big mouth also comes in handy for a yawn of epic proportions. Having such a huge mouth also comes in handy when feeding chicks. The babies have to reach right down their parents' throat to reach the fish stored in the gullet. This is definitely one of the world's most extreme kisses. But strangely enough, humans may have started smooching the same way. There's a theory that our kissing behavior began way back with our prehistoric ancestors. In the days before supermarkets, mothers had to prepare baby's first meal of solids. Mom would first chew up the food and then use her tongue to push the mush into the baby's mouth. This meeting of lips became a gesture of affection, and we've been hooked on kissing ever since. Our hunger for kisses means that the average person will spend a total of 2 weeks of their lives kissing. And the good news is that a really passionate kiss burns 2 calories a minute. Pelicans may not push their mouths together for as long as some humans, but their kissing can be just as enthusiastic. And pelicans have found another use for their enormous beak. When they're in the mood for love, they apply the bird equivalent of lipstick. Courting pelicans are essentially voiceless, which is why they advertise their availability with a bright red pouch. The pelican's brilliant beak makes it the biggest show-off in the countdown. Unlike our next contender, whose big mouth is all the better to eat you with. The countdown's next massive mouth is attached to a truly terrifying predator. Stalking you silently through the water, it can attack without a warning. Crocodiles have chomped their way into number 6 in the countdown because almost 1/6 of their body is mouth. That's a mouth-to-body length ratio of about 15%. Every scale on a crocodile's body, including those on the jaws, has a small dot called a mechanoreceptor that picks up the tiniest vibrations in the water. And inside that big mouth are more dots. This time, chemoreceptors that taste chemical changes in the water. That's how a crocodile can literally taste and feel your presence from almost a kilometer away. Once a croc finds you, you're in big trouble. A study of the biomechanics of bite strength in 2002 found that a saltwater crocodile nearly 5 meters long slams its jaws shut with more than 1,700 kilograms of force, the strongest bite yet measured. And in Australia, that pressure is being used to push competitive swimmers. Darwin's swimming coach Mark Davis has a novel approach to training.
A lot of good swimmers, fast swimmers, try to imagine they're being chased by a shark or something to make them go faster. In our case, we're going to use a crocodile. Right, put it in.
Don't worry, this isn't as dangerous as it looks. Mark has checked out the croc's top speed and given the swimmers enough of a head start to make sure that the croc won't catch up. So, how did the swimmers feel about their new training partner?
Absolutely terrifying.
And I was going so slow that it was going to like just come up here and its big mouth was going to go. And all that.
Swimming with a croc is one way to beat the clock. If you've been left open-mouthed by gigantic jaws and pouting pelicans, then get ready to discover why you don't want to monkey around with this big mouth. And later, why is it that when this giant yawns, thousands die? Find out next on The Most Extreme. According to the movies, the oceans are full of dangers. And the biggest, baddest big mouth of them all belongs to the shark. Our next contender has a mouth so monstrous that even Hollywood couldn't have dreamt it up. Imagine diving into the water with a shark the size of a whale. Meet the whale shark, the biggest fish in the sea. An average-sized whale shark can have a 1.2-meter mouth on a 7.5-meter body. That's a mouth-to-body ratio of 16%. But there's nothing to fear from this gigantic gape. It may have 3,000 sharply hooked teeth, but all of them are only a few millimeters long. This shark isn't interested in sinking its teeth into anything because it's really just a big sucker. The whale shark prefers plankton to people. Like a gigantic vacuum cleaner, it sucks up seawater and filters plankton from nearly 1 million liters of water every hour. That's more than enough to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Anything this big that eats that much is sure to attract a crowd. The whale shark is like a huge floating reef, providing shelter for many species of fish and the odd leftover from that massive maw. But whale sharks aren't the only ones spending a lot of time with their mouths open wide. The average jaw-stretching, mouth-dropping, face-flexing yawn lasts about 6 seconds. Most of us yawn about 10 times every day, which soon adds up. It's been estimated that in your lifetime, you'll spend just under 3 weeks yawning. And we all know how contagious yawns can be. Studies have shown that 55% of people will yawn within 5 minutes of seeing someone else yawning. Whale sharks have sensors running up and down their sides to detect pressure changes in the water. But for such a sensitive creature, whale sharks are really thick-skinned. Their 15-centimeter hide is the thickest skin of any living animal. But if you think this shark's permanent yawn is impressive, just wait till you see the great gape of our next contender. The next time you visit a dentist, just imagine how much easier things would be if you had a flip-top head, like the animal coming in at number 4 in the countdown. The hippopotamus would be a dentist's dream patient. Its gape stretches more than 1 meter and extends past 150 degrees. But checking these guys for plaque does pose a problem. The hippopotamus uses its supersized mouth as a weapon. Males fight for dominance using their heads like sledgehammers, delivering powerful blows that can drive their razor-sharp incisors and long canine teeth deep into rival males. Hippos have been estimated to kill 200 people a year with those terrible jaws. No wonder keepers at the Los Angeles Zoo keep their hands well out of reach when feeding their big-mouthed charges. Why take chances with an animal that's been seen biting an adult male crocodile clean in half? But crocs and keepers are definitely not on the menu, for these big vegetarians prefer eating grapes. It takes a lot of bunches to fill the mouth of a hippo and a human. Robbie Snooks has an unusual talent. For the last 2 years, he's been performing at venues across America using nothing more than a bunch of grapes and his very big mouth.
Hello. Watch this.
Robbie has become famous for the astonishing number of grapes he can stuff into his mouth.
I guess I've always been gifted with this huge mouth. I always knew that I had my cheeks were elasticy, and I don't have a gag reflex. So meaning I can pretty much shove them as far as I can back, and I won't have that throw up feeling.
47!
Those 3 things are just natural to me, so I can just give me the grapes and I can go. You want to try?
If you want to really threaten Robbie's record, be prepared to have more than 70 grapes in your mouth. And they can't break. Each grape must remain intact to be counted. Robbie discovered this unusual talent when looking for a way to ease the tension when studying for exams. He thought he'd scare his roommates by seeing how many grapes he could put in his mouth. And while it's scary to watch a human hippopotamus in action, not even Robbie can compete with the massive mouth of the real animal. A hippopotamus consumes almost 50 kilograms of food a day, which would be an awful lot of grapes. But then eating is easy when your mouth is so big you can swallow a whole bunch of grapes in a single gulp. If the last 2 massive mouths have left you gasping, then take a deep breath, because we're about to travel into the belly of a beast. And later, we'll discover a small fish with a big mouth and a bad attitude. That's coming up on The Most Extreme. Our countdown of nature's biggest mouths continues with the largest animal ever to star on the big screen.
A whale can stave in the ribs of the biggest ships, swallow whole crews, pick its teeth with the oars. Mind, lad, if God ever wanted to be a fish, he'd be a whale. Believe that, he'd be a whale.
Actually, whales are mammals, not fish. So while Hollywood may have been a little biologically challenged, at least they knew that whales do have the biggest mouths in the world. But the whale is only number 3 in the countdown because, just like an elephant, in proportion to the rest of their massive body, their mouth may only be about 20% of their total length. But that's still an awful lot of mouth. The tongue alone from some of the bigger whales can weigh more than a ton. A single gulp of seawater from this right whale is enough to fill more than 50 bathtubs. So is a whale's mouth big enough to swallow a human? The Bible tells the story of a man who had a close encounter with a leviathan. During a terrible storm in the Mediterranean, sailors discovered that the cause of their problems was a reluctant prophet called Jonah. Much to their surprise, he suggested that the only way they'd be saved was if they threw him overboard. Things were looking a little grim for Jonah, especially when an enormous sea creature came along and swallowed him in a single gulp. According to legend, Jonah spent 3 days in the belly of a whale. But careful translation of the ancient text reveals that Jonah was actually swallowed by a great fish. This makes sense, because while a whale may have a mouth more than big enough to hold a soggy prophet, it would have had a great deal of trouble swallowing him. Jonah could never have made it into a right whale's stomach because, although it's one of the biggest animals on the planet, these whales have throats so small they'd have trouble swallowing anything bigger than a grapefruit. And that's why they feed on some of the smallest animals in the sea. Krill are tiny shrimp-like creatures, but there are an awful lot of them. Just one swarm can cover an area equivalent to that of half a football field. These are enormous shrimp cocktails for the right whale. It uses a mustache of long whiskers to filter out krill as its huge tongue squeezes out the water. But other whales prefer eating fish and have found a unique way of getting the biggest mouthful possible. Humpback whales go fishing using a net made out of thin air. Far beneath a school of fish, the humpback whale exhales a big burst of bubbles. And as the ring of bubbles rises, fish freak out and form a tightly packed school. Trapped by a wall of air, the fish have nowhere to go. Then the humpback whale surges up through the middle of the bubble ring with its mouth wide open. Sometimes more than 20 whales may join in a communal lunge through the bubble net, which turns the surface into a cauldron of bubbles and blubber. And as if the humpback's mouth wasn't big enough already, it has another trick. Pleats in the lining of its throat expand during feeding, which means the mouth can contain up to 4 times its usual capacity. While humpback whales breathe out to catch fish, our next contender uses its massive mouth to suck in water, super fast. Diving into number 2 in the countdown is a most unusual fish. It's often difficult to see because it's beautifully camouflaged and stays very, very still. It has a big mouth and an even bigger appetite for other fish. The trouble is, most fish are constantly moving, and our next contender is a real layabout. fish have to be enticed into the massive jaws of the animal hiding at number 2 in the countdown, the anglerfish. A spine from a modified dorsal fin serves as a fishing pole, and a flap of skin does a remarkable impersonation of a wriggling worm. Few escape from those massive jaws. The anglerfish is the countdown's second-ranked animal because some species have a mouth-to-body length ratio of over 30%. An anglerfish can expand the volume of its mouth by 12 times in less than 6/1000ths of a second. It literally sucks fish into its mouth, a move that makes it one of the fastest feeding vertebrates known to science. But one man also has a fast mouth. Meet John Machida.
Welcome to Gorilla Grill. How may I help you?
I don't know. What do you think is good here today?
I don't know. We got the menu right there. Go ahead and choose something off of it.
Well, let me take a look at it over here. You know, a hamburger sounds pretty good, but I don't know, maybe a cheeseburger, because sometimes cheese is good. I like to have cheese on my burger, but sometimes I don't. But the grilled chicken sandwich is pretty good because that's really not, too fattening. Like sometimes cheeseburgers are more fattening. You know, the vegetarian's garden burger, and I'm afraid of that. I don't get anything that says vegetarian because I'm not a vegetarian. I'm a meat eater, so I really don't want to worry about that. Then there's the all-beef hot dog, because that usually gives me indigestion. But you might have really good ones here, so I might want to try one of those. And then the french fries, of course, I don't know if I want a large one or a small one because it depends on what else I'm going to get. How about the nachos? No, there's a little too much cheese on the nachos. The chicken nuggets is the whole kid's meal, but I'm not wild and I'm not a kid, so I probably wouldn't get that soft. But that might be just, might have the right flavor to it, so I might want to get that. And then the soft drink, I really don't know if I want a soft drink or I want a sports drink or I want sports bottle or bottled water. Icy's, Juicy's, coffee. I don't know if I want water, if I want something in a drink. I don't know. What do you think?
John is one of the fastest talkers in the world, verbalizing over 600 words a minute. That's over 10 words a second. Most people can't even think that fast.
No, thank you.
He developed the skill through many hours of practice and now makes a living by being the fastest mouth in the West.
Peppers, we got the cheese and all that kind of stuff, and these things, I mean, I don't know, what the rhino sat on this, or the elephant sat on it, or whatever, but I don't know, it looks pretty good. I don't know what I want to start with.
And a lot of the commercials that I do, and a lot of the personal appearances, I purposely build slow spots in, because if I don't stop, people don't breathe when they listen to me. They hold their breath because they keep waiting for me to take the breath because they think that's the obvious time for them to do it. But if I don't take a breath, then they really sit there and they start to turn blue and they're sitting there going like this while he's wondering when are you ever going to breathe. So if I just take a pause, then everyone can breathe, and then I can start talking fast again, and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about anybody passing out in the audience.
The anglerfish doesn't have to worry about holding its breath. The only things turning blue are on the menu. But go over the edge of the reef, and you'd have to hold your breath for an awfully long time to find another species of anglerfish. No light penetrates 4 kilometers below the surface, so the deep-sea anglerfish has to use a very different lure. This anglerfish is a reddish-black color because at these depths, the only light comes from bioluminescent creatures, and most of that light is blue. The dark skin of the anglerfish absorbs this light, which means that its body remains invisible. Then, it tempts fish to its enormous toothy grin using a lure that glows in the dark. Millions of light-producing bacteria live inside the lure. It's thought that some species can control the light emissions to mimic the glow and flashes of other creatures like small shrimps. Its elastic stomach means that it can swallow fish more than twice its own length. These fearsome hunters would be the terror of the deep, if only they grew a little bigger than a tennis ball. That leaves the way clear for our final contender, which has such a big mouth that it literally bites off more than it can chew. We've seen the 9 contenders. Their mouths are the biggest of the big. Only one animal is a more extreme biting machine. It's number 1, and it's coming up next on The Most Extreme. In the rainforests of South America, nothing is safe from the most extreme mouth in the countdown. It's been recorded biting anything that enters its territory, be it as small as a mouse or as big as a fully grown horse. Its bad temper, slimy appearance, and monstrous appetite have earned it the nickname Jabba the Hutt. Swallowing a mouse whole is easy if you're an Argentinian wide-mouthed frog. That's why it has another nickname, the mouth on legs. We would look very different if we had jaws proportional to those of an Argentinian wide-mouthed frog. Instead of having a mouth that's only about 2% of our body length, we'd be smiling out of jaws that were half the length of our body. Imagine how quickly you could eat your dinner with a mouth that was nearly a meter wide. Being able to swallow a whole watermelon could open up a new career in the world of competitive eating. After all, it takes the fastest eaters in the world a quarter of an hour to swallow about 5 kilograms of watermelon. 65 hard-boiled eggs would be just an appetizer, rather than a meal that takes competitive eaters more than 6 minutes to eat. And you could easily stuff 7 hamburgers into your cheeks, instead of having to chew through them one by one over 10 minutes like they do on the 4th of July at Coney Island. An Argentinian wide-mouthed frog would feel right at home at Nathan's famous World Hot Dog Eating Contest. The rules are simple. 20 of the most impressive eaters on the planet have 12 minutes to swallow as much food as possible. Regurgitation results in disqualification. Strangely enough, in the world of competitive eating, it seems as though size isn't everything. Some observers have a theory that skinny people's stomachs can expand more easily because they're not corseted by the ring of fat that burdens the heavier eaters. So if you're thinking that you might have a talent for this sport, take a minute to consider that to be competitive, you're going to have to eat more than 2 hot dogs a minute. Competitive eating is definitely a sport for trained athletes, because swallowing that much food can be dangerous for your health. And if you're a wide-mouthed frog, it can even be lethal. The Argentinian wide-mouthed frog is a truly dedicated glutton that has an extra set of teeth on the roof of its mouth. But like the small teeth around the outside of the jaw, the extra set of tiny cone-shaped teeth is not for chewing, but for holding. That means once the frog takes a bite of something, it's hard to let go, even when it's one of the family. The wide-mouthed frog is so aggressive that it will literally bite anything that comes near it. Its big mouth means it can stuff huge amounts of food down its throat. The only trouble is that sometimes the wide-mouthed frog doesn't know when to stop. These ferocious frogs are so stubborn that they'll keep eating until they rupture their stomach. And they won't let go of a possible meal, even if it's bigger than they are. And even if it means choking to death. In the ponds of Argentina, there really is nothing worse than having a frog in your throat. And that's why, out of all the awesome orifices in the animal kingdom, the wide-mouthed frog really is the most extreme.